like to thank everybody for coming. Thank Nash County for agreeing to have this meeting. It is our intent to follow the agenda as printed unless there are Nash County any changes. It is our intent to follow the agenda as printed. The agenda is fine. Okay. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Edgecombe County Board of Commissioners to order. Mr. Belfield?
I'd like to call the Nash County Board of Commissioners special meeting to order.
At this time, we will ask Commissioner Wayne Hines to offer the invocation.
God, we are so thankful for this day. We thank you for the blessings that we have received and those things that we've done as we serve. And we ask now your blessings upon our minds and our hearts, that whatever we do in this meeting, it will be the concern for the citizens we serve. Bless our thoughts, bless our hearts, bless our minds, and we give thanks unto thee.
At this time, with our board members, I'm Leonard Wiggins, the Commissioner for District 3.
Eric Evans, County Manager.
Jonathan Felton, Commissioner, District 5.
Evelyn Powell, Commissioner, District 1.
Billy Wooten, District 4.
Donald Boswell, District 6.
Wayne Hines, District 7.
Malin Deloge, County Attorney.
Randy Mungo, Clerk of the Board.
Joanne Crabtree, Finance Director for the county.
Fred Belfield, Nash County Board Chair.
Billy Morgan, Vice Chairman, Nash County.
Lou Richardson, Nash County, District 1.
Robbie Davis, Nash County, District 7.
Wayne Outlaw, Nash County, District 5.
Mary Wells, Nash County, District 6.
Lisa Barnes, Nash County, District 4.
Z. Lamb, County Manager.
Rosemary Dorsey, Assistant County Manager and Acting Clerk today.
Vince Durham, County Attorney.
Donna Wood, Finance Director.
Guys, you can introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. Viola Harris, District 2, Edgecombe County.
According to the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have presentations from each board, and at that time, after that time, there will just be discussions from all of us as a group with no objections.
Yeah, I want to mention that this is a meeting between the two boards and there'll be no public comments.
I would agree. It's not a public hearing, so we will follow the agenda as printed. At this time, we'll ask Mr. Evans of our Edgecombe County. He's the chairman's designee to make our presentation.
I'd like to say good morning to everyone. I'm grateful for the opportunity to come and discuss this very important issue, and honored that the commissioners have allowed me to summarize comments and thoughts that they've had in different meetings where they've discussed this issue. I plan in this presentation to discuss some issues that have been raised in different meetings and previous meetings that we've had together. One being funding, second being Rocky Mount's participation, thirdly lawsuits, and then finally impact. So first, number one, we want to talk about funding. There has been described as being inequities as far as capital investment from Edgecombe County to the Nash Rocky Mount school system. So equity in funding has been gauged or defined by how proportionate funding is to the percent of students from each county attending Nash Rocky Mount school system. And that certainly is a logical method to try to determine what is the equitable participation should be of both counties in the school system. This year, 11.8% of Nash Rocky Mount students are Edgecombe County citizens. So let's look at this current year. We've discussed previous years, projections for future years, but just to sort of understand sort of the methodology in defining or examining our equity in funding. Let's look at the current year as an example. So we will be talking about capital outlay and debt service payments. So for this current year is close to $1.4 million is being paid to Nash Rocky Mount School System for capital outlay. Then there is a total debt service of $1.4 million, and that includes debt service on a number of projects that were done over previous years. In that calculation, we excluded the debt service payment on Rocky Mount Senior High, and that being because Edgecombe County had a bond referendum some time back, and the $3.4 million that we invested in the construction of that school, we are paying that directly, so we took that out of the equation. So total capital outlay and debt service paid this current year is a little over $2.8 million. So if we're looking at equity of funding, then 11.8% of that is $333,486. So that would be what Edgecombe should pay if we're using this as the gauge to determine what equitable funding should be. So this current year, this is what's coming from Edgecombe County. Capital outlay $187,500, lottery funds $150,000. So that's a total of funding coming either directly through Edgecombe County or coming on behalf of the Edgecombe County students in Nash Rocky Mount schools of $337,500. So if this is where we should be, this is where we are. So as we look at it, we don't see that there is a gap in capital funding. Also, looking back over 20 years of funding that's come from Edgecombe County, Edgecombe has allocated a little over $5.5 million in capital funding, plus the $3.43 million from the bond referendum that went towards the construction of the high school. And that's a total of a little over $9 million in the last 20 years. State funds allocated $2.3 million in ADM funds, average daily membership, and $1.9 million in lottery funds for a total of $4.3 million. That's in the last 20 years. So that's over $13.3 million that has come either directly through or on behalf of the Edgecombe County students in Nash Rocky Mount school system. So that's for the last 20 years. So that talks about where we are now, and looking back, it's a very similar picture. Of course, these numbers fluctuate over the years. So then there's the concern of future funding. That's a reasonable concern. We have concerns about that for Edgecombe schools because there are needs in Edgecombe County public school system, and we have to figure out, can we help to meet those needs for the schools. So the Nash Rocky Mount school system is under their current 10-year capital improvement plan, has a total project or total capital need of $136 million. That's a significant amount of money. I would imagine that Edgecombe County Schools probably, I think, a pretty similar number. There's concern over Edgecombe's participation in those future capital projects. And looking at the school CIP plan, there are some plans for some significant repairs, even some construction. So there's concern of our participation in that, because at each school we have varying levels of students, Edgecombe residents, who attend those schools. So I guess then the question is it equitable for Edgecombe to pay that 11.8 or whatever it may happen to be for that particular year, because the number changes depending on the total number of students and the number of students that come from Edgecombe County. It has been in recent years, the percentage was around about 13%. I think this is the lowest percentage in the last 5 years or so. So, you know, the question is would it then be equitable for Edgecombe to pay 11.8% for future projects? Well, I guess our concern and our question then is, will those projects continue to be primarily on schools with the fewest Edgecombe residents? We don't have any control on where those decisions are. I'm not saying necessarily that's for the commissioners to discuss as to whether we should, but that will be a concern for us if we're talking about future funding. If we're going to participate, how much of that investment will be on those schools with with mostly more of the Edgecombe County students attending. But certainly, as we are with our own school system, we are concerned for the needs of our students. We're concerned for the capital needs and the buildings in which they learn. So Edgecombe is committed to fairly consider the future capital needs of schools in which Edgecombe students attend. The second issue that was raised was Rocky Mount's participation. Everybody here at the table knows this without me saying it, but perhaps maybe for a few here in the audience, Rocky Mount provides current expense gap payment, which is per the 1992 legislation. The per pupil expenditure from Nash County is higher than it has been from Edgecombe County, and the 1992 legislation requires that the city of Rocky Mount pay that gap in between. And I have to say that I believe that the full discussion of that should be reserved for participation with the city of Rocky Mount. One of the reasons the board has been hesitant to have a meeting without Rocky Mount being at the table is because this has been a significant point of contention. And this is funding that Rocky Mount pays. This is them abiding by the 1992 legislation. So I feel like that for us to really have a deep discussion about that, Rocky Mount really needs to be at the table to discuss that with us. However, I do want to mention that it has been mentioned that a possible and perhaps reasonable alternative to Rocky Mount using utility funds to pay for that current expense gap, it would be to use sales tax revenues generated on the Edgecombe County side of Rocky Mount. So hopefully at some point when we get the chance to have a discussion, whether it be all three boards together or individually, that we'll be able to discuss this as an option. The third issue that has been raised has been right much talk about lawsuits and the potential for lawsuits and what participation will Edgecombe County or responsibility will Edgecombe County have if any lawsuits come about, in particular from Nash Rocky Mount Schools to the Nash County Board of Commissioners. As most everybody, I'm sure maybe everybody in the room knows, that school districts in North Carolina are permitted to sue counties over the sufficiency of funding. That's a right that the school boards have. Whether people agree with that or not is for you to decide, but that is a right that school boards have in North Carolina. And I guess our question is, and I'm certainly not an attorney, but our question is that I'm not sure that Edgecombe County is out of reach of a lawsuit from the Nash Rocky Mount school system. We would hope that we'd be able to build a partnership and have open dialogues, and perhaps from this meeting we can move in that direction to be able to talk about what the funding needs are in the future and how all of us can together best meet the needs of the students in both school systems. And so that was the third issue that's been raised. The fourth and final issue that I want to mention this morning is the impact. What is the impact of all of this? If there is a county line merger or demerger, however you want to phrase it, if that change happens, if the 1,800 or so students that are currently in Nash Rocky Mount school systems are brought to Edgecombe County schools, there will be a significant impact on state and federal fundings for the Nash Rocky Mount school system. The funding mix for schools is quite complicated. There are a lot of variables that trigger those funds either going up or down. And I think without a doubt, I don't know if anyone will argue that that would be a significant impact to the Nash Rocky Mount school system. It's not just a matter of the ADM funds following those students as they do now if they leave and go to a charter school, but it resets all of the calculations for low wealth funding and a number of other block funding sources. Concern for us is that if that were to happen, there is no high school on the Edgecombe County side of Rocky Mountain. Now, certainly, I believe that the high schools, the Edgecombe school system, the 3 high schools, are not at capacity, but that would be a significant problem or issue to have to deal with for those students to have to be bused from Rocky Mount to one of the 3 high schools in the county. And not just the logistics and the cost of it all, but what it will mean for parents. Parents oftentimes will make decisions about where they want their children to go based on how long they're going to have to ride a bus. I've got 2 daughters myself. I won't get into my personal business, but that was a significant factor for my wife and I in deciding where we were going to send our children to school when they first started, was that how long were they going to have to ride on a bus. And so that's an impact that I think we need to fully consider. So those are my points, and I hope on behalf of our commissioners that I have summarized the things that you've mentioned to me well, but I'll then turn it back over to you, Mr. Wiggins.
I think that summarizes our presentation. Ms. Beverly?
All right. We'll have 2 presentations. I'm going to call on Commissioner Robert Davis to start lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If everybody can hear me okay, I'm going to stand or possibly sit right here rather than stand up front. I appreciate the time this morning. I have looked forward for many months, as our board has, to be able to meet together with the joint boards on this subject matter. First of all, for those that know that my wife lays my clothes out every morning when I get dressed, I will point out, which Miss Richardson knows this very well, I'll point out that the reason I don't have a tie on this morning, she made me wear a pastel yellow shirt, which indicates, according to her, a very calming effect. And certainly we all in the room need that calming effect today. And Donald, you may well be married to a lady very similar to mine. So I apologize for not having the tie on, but if you saw what the tie looked like with this shirt she gave me, you'd understand why I didn't leave home with it. But I do appreciate my wife very much, and she really believes in things like that. She wouldn't let me wear it. I suggested a white shirt, and she says it's too starch. You just don't want to wear a white shirt today, and certainly don't get anything red out of your closet. So, understood very well. Eric, and I appreciate your comments very much, and we all know this is indeed a very, very complex issue. School funding in itself is very complex, and quite frankly, some of our board members, including myself, have worked on this particular project for 4 or 5 years now, and every day that I open up this folder that I've accumulated, I certainly learn something different, particularly something new, particularly as it relates to funding. We are prepared, and what I'd like to make clear is I am speaking on behalf of all of our board on the majority of my presentation. I am speaking on behalf of the majority of our board when it gets to the county line merger. We have a board, as Mr. Belfield will point out, that is totally in agreement that we think we have a funding problem. We are not totally in agreement to what steps need to be done to correct that as of yet. But I just want to be clear why I'm speaking first, and then our chairman will certainly speak later. I'm speaking on behalf of the action that our board has taken and on the behalf of the majority of our board. We have used a PowerPoint presentation, not quite as crisp and pretty as Eric's, but one that some of the members of the board did ourselves on several presentations throughout the community for this particular item, and that's what we'll be using. First of all, the basis for county financing for public schools, we just got a little graph up there so you'll understand primarily how much education takes out of a county's budget on the left-hand side. And then you'll see on the right-hand side capital funding, what part of that falls on the county, which is by far the majority of the funding for all capital funding falls on the county, as you see in this graph here. And that's county funding, that's capital funding only, to make that clear. Also, you'll see revenue, where revenue comes from for a county, and then you'll see how much of that pie goes to education, which is a very significant amount. So that's why the items that we are discussing here today, funding education, affects each county so significantly as it relates to its total budget. The timeline for this, which I'll spend very little time on this particular item, but this, I think I had my first conversation with Edgecombe County chairman some 4 years ago, 5 years ago, about our concern about this. We talked several times about the inequity in the funding, but really it came to light for our board in September of 2013 when we were presented the capital improvement needs moving forward for Nash Rocky Mount School System. It was presented to us, it was $136 million, as Eric pointed out, for the next 10 years, a very large number. And that particular night, as we met with our school board, I recall one of us asked, have you also met with Nash, with the Edgecombe County Commissioners about this? And the answer, we haven't yet. Do you think we should? And of course, we immediately said that we certainly think you should, because they would need to be a funding partner with us on this large amount of money. So that's when it actually became, the discussion began in earnest, and it has been going on pretty much ever since then. The current facts, I'd like to go through if I could. First of all, I want to make it very clear that no member of our board has ever said or had the thought that we do not think Edgecombe County has done their part as it relates to the general statute. We are very aware that they have done exactly what they were supposed to do and have always done that. The city of Rocky Mount, in its part of the funding, has always done exactly what they were supposed to do, and it's not a question of whether we are doing what we're supposed to do. Our question is, does the merger bill need to be looked at and maybe updated? We all know that general statutes from time to time need to be looked at because they do not last forever, and they sometimes do not fit the current model we have. Very important one, in 1920, we all know, actually on August 18th of 1920, prior to that time, the ladies in the room couldn't vote. Certainly that was a very bad bill, or a bad law. It got changed. There are many other in history that have changed. So from time to time, we just need to look at our general statute and see if it fits what we're dealing with today. And by far the majority, or all of our board, feels like this statute needs to be revisited and needs to be updated to fit what we're dealing with today. The biggest problem is the current expense is now set by Nash County for the Nash Rocky Mount School System. We really do not have any involvement from Edgecombe County, nor do we have any involvement from the city of Rocky Mount. So what that gives you is Rocky Mount is in an awful vulnerable situation, because no matter what we set ours at, and no matter what Edgecombe sets theirs at, they've got to pay the gap funding or the amount difference between that. And it has varied from year to year, anywhere from about $1.1 million down to as low as the past year. I think it's down as low as $176,000, if I remember my numbers right. Average, it has been somewhere in the $650,000, $700,000 range per year. The other problem that we see with the general statute is the fact that Rocky Mount must use a source of income other than ad valorem tax to pay this gap funding. And what has been done the total 23 years, 24 years, it has always been derived from taking funds out of the utility fund, which means it comes from either the electric fund or the gas fund, which are the two revenue producers. Water and sewer has never made any money for anybody, I don't think. It's certainly a requirement, but you make very little money with water and sewer. So all this money, which in total has equaled somewhere in the $23 million worth over the last 24 years, has come from the utility fund for the city of Rocky Mount. And we all know, even though we've recently gotten some help, we've always suffered with high utility bills. The other thing that our board is concerned with is the fact that the best we can determine, about 82% of that revenue from the utility fund is derived from the citizens of the Nash County side. So in essence, what we see is happening with current expense is the fact that whatever that gap money is, 82% of it is paid, even though it's by Rocky Mount, or paid by residents on the Nash County side. And certainly, I don't know how anyone could think that would be fair. And in effect, we've got citizens that are on Rocky Mount utilities that are actually paying twice for schools because they're paying through the utility bills and certainly are paying through the ad valorem tax bills. You know, really, the Rocky Mount funding of schools, it wouldn't be anything wrong if they had the revenue, but certainly they should be paying for all students that live in Rocky Mount. They shouldn't be a select few that get a subsidy because they live in a certain area. The map that we're going to talk about a little more later is up here behind me, and we'll put it on the screen when we get there. But you'll see that not even all the students on the Edgecombe side of Rocky Mount receive benefit from this extra funding. We've got streets where students on one side of the road get extra funding from Rocky Mount. Students on the other side of the road do not get that extra funding. And certainly no students on the Nash County side of Rocky Mount get any extra funding from the city of Rocky Mount. School funding in itself is by general statute, responsibility of our counties. It is not a responsibility of municipalities. And that's why we feel so adamant that we have got to work to the point of getting Rocky Mount out of the funding, which will then make us like the other 99 counties in North Carolina. We're the only county in North Carolina that actually provide funds from our county to help educate children from another county. Now, we've got many situations throughout, and we certainly have school districts across county lines, but we do not have any other arrangement like we've got here, and we're the only county that actually does that. Eric said that he's not sure, and maybe we aren't sure, but in the past, and as recently as 2 years ago, when there is a dispute between the school board and the county commissioners about the amount of funding provided, as it current stands, our general statute allows that school board to sue the county commissioners, which in my own mind has got to be the wildest thing in the general statutes from A to Z. I don't know why we would ever have a law that would allow one elected board to sue another elected board within a county. And I love all the attorneys in the room, but to pay those fees all out of our taxpayers' money just doesn't make sense to me. And certainly there are movements underway. Currently we're under a moratorium in Nash County where our school board can't sue us. We have 1 more year left on that. But when we got sued 2 years ago, Nash County we got threatened of a lawsuit. Certainly we got busy real quick and got it resolved because we didn't want to pay all those attorney fees. We'd much rather put that money in the school systems or some other need for the county. But maybe at some point our legislators will see the need to do something with that particular rule and just let us solve our own problems locally without lawsuits. But as it stands and what has shown to happen in the past, we're the only county or the only funding agency that would stand to be sued if we could not come to an agreement. And that's the current expense money. The other real issue, and I'm going to move on along, of course, what we're talking about is the General Statute Senate Bill 612, which is now 22, 23, 24 years old, and that's why we think it should be looked at. If you've never read that statute, I would suggest you get it out and you know, it's not that long. It's very easily very easily read, and just study that a little bit. Another reason that we think it needs to be revisited is when we first merged the school system, we had pretty close to 4,000 students. You can see the decrease over time, and we are down now to somewhere, Erica, I'm sure you're right, somewhere in the 1,800. When we first started talking about this, it was 2,000. Now it's down even more than that. So you see we're declining, and that really, the decline in population affects how the statute works. And really, to me, the decline makes it put more burden on the Nash County side. Appropriation history, again, I'd like to make it very clear that we all agree that everybody has done what they're supposed to do by this Senate Bill 612. But this is a appropriation history for about 20 of the years, and of course there's 3 or 4 more years. But if you look at the whole thing, Rocky Mount has put 17 million approximately in current expense, and they have put 5 million in capital expense because the general statute required the city of Rocky Mount to provide $500,000 a year for capital for the first 10 years, but it also required Nash County to put $500,000 in it for the first 10 years, and there was no requirement for Edgecombe County to put funding in for capital even from the beginning as an appropriation, only when there was some kind of a bond or referendum. And certainly Edgecombe has done exactly what they're supposed to do there as well. So in essence, all total, it's about $23 million that Rocky Mount, as I said earlier, has put in this. This slide right here, if I were an Edgecombe County Commissioner, would bother me tremendously, and it's pretty much out of their control. But since the merger, the capital projects that have been done, and when I say capital projects, I'm talking about new schools or major additions. I'm not talking about the upkeep and routine renovation of schools. But we have spent in Nash Rocky Mount School System $134.8 million, roughly $135 million in capital improvements. I think we should all be very proud of the fact that we have been able to put that kind of funding in capital improvements for our schools over that period of time, because prior to that, 25 years earlier, there was almost no capital improvements put in schools. So our Board of Commissioners on the Nash side, as well as the Edgecombe side, have done very well in providing capital funding for schools, and it's something that I think our board is very proud of. The only issue with that, and what would indeed bother me the most, is the fact that out of that $134.8 million, only $4.3 million of it was spent, $4.6 million was spent on facilities in Edgecombe County. You know, and it doesn't take you long to realize there's something wrong there. And what the problem is, our Board of Commissioners really do not get to get involved in where capital money is going to be spent, and certainly Edgecombe Board of Commissioners do not get a chance to get involved in it. I'll say we don't get involved in it, but certainly our board on the Nash side has some idea when we put money on the table to build schools with. We kind of know where it's going, but it's completely out of Edgecombe's hands, and if I were a commissioner there, I would just want to have control of where the capital money was spent. But it's just been, to me, completely out of kilter ever since the merger was done. Anyway, as we talked about the capital improvement plan for the next 10 years, there is about $25 million on that particular plan that should be spent in Edgecombe County. Under the current arrangements, I have my serious doubts that would happen, because it is very difficult for our board to provide capital funding for money to be spent in another county, and certainly I would think your board would want control over where the money was spent. Back when we first took this up about a year ago now, almost been a year, our board came up and voted on 3 options that we wanted to present to Edgecombe County. Option 1 was to get legislation enacted that would put the 2 school systems back at the county line. And these are not in any order. Number 2 was to leave the school systems as they currently were, but to work towards getting Rocky Mount out of the school funding of the Nash Rocky Mount school systems, and to have Edgecombe County come up to the plate as it relates to all 3 pools of money: the current expense, the capital expenditure, and then the capital major projects. And it would be based on, according to what we proposed, strictly on the number of students in each district. At that particular time, it was 13%. It has gone down a little bit more from that. And of course, number 3 was to leave it as it is and have no change. And there really wasn't a member of our board that felt like number 3 was an option at all. So here we are today, a year later almost, and we've had numerous meetings with numerous ones. The first time today for us all to be together, and we just haven't been able to resolve the funding part of it. So we are the majority of our board, and this is kind of where our board takes a little bit different direction. I'm not sure how much different, but we are just ready to move forward with a new boundary of doing the county line merger, since we haven't been able to agree on the funding package. And we sincerely believe, and I believe this with all my heart, that in a 3 or 4 or 5 year period, that both counties and the school system are going to be much better off. I looked a couple of weeks ago, your superintendent, which is here, seemed to be extremely happy about the fact, and I think he should be, that he had gained 150 students back and the amount of money that came with those students. But you know, to gain 1,700 students back at one time, and the amount of money that to go with those would be an enormous amount of money. Quite frankly, the way I review the numbers, and I'm just a number freak, and I don't like to use the word I'm going to speak for the majority of our board. We feel like Edgecombe will certainly be better off in the long run. Nash County is not going to be better off right away. We will struggle a little bit because of the type of funding that Eric was speaking of. But in the end, it would put this particular item to bed forever. I just feel like any other way we do it, we are going to be talking about numbers and funding indefinitely. And it would just be good for us to be like the other 99 counties in North Carolina. And it certainly, we know that it would take some work, but if the 2 boards could work together, we could work through the high school problem that Mr. Evans brought up. We have recognized that as an issue in every one of our presentations. We know it's there. We also, what really another thing that has brought the urgency of this is the Rocky Mount High School. And when we built that particular thing, we spent about $43 million with land purchases and building that high school. Edgecombe did exactly what they were supposed to do. They had some bond money, and they allotted that portion of the students, they had in Nash Rocky Mount School System from that bond letting to that high school, and it was about $3.4 million. But in effect, what you got is a $43 million high school that Edgecombe in the beginning put the $3.4 million in. The rest of it was either put in by Nash or some money that the school system had, and the rest of it financed. And yet, to us, the real problem is the fact that Edgecombe County has 37% of the kids in that high school. And that just shows how unfair it can be under the current legislation. Our next needs are going to be for elementary schools, and they'll be in the new priority. They're going to be out in Nash County in the Red Oak area is really our worst need moving forward and consolidating some schools in that area. And you know, all the costs is going to be borne by Nash County under the current legislation, and that's just not, it's just not the way it should be. So we are hoping that we can move forward with getting this resolved one way or the other. If you really study it, for instance, if we were to do this, it's only a net difference of 71 children. If you take the children that live in Edgecombe that go to school in a facility in Nash, and you take the children in Nash that go to a facility in Edgecombe, excluding the high school, it would be 71 students difference, and that's all it would be. Eric, could you possibly advance that just a little bit more?
Yes, sir.
Back one. Thank you. It has been presented by some that they felt like this was just a racial thing that our board brought up. I want to assure you that, quite frankly, I personally wish that every one of these kids were white kids. It would make it easier. But they're not, and we realize that. But if it were to happen, what this chart shows is where we are in current student population and where we would be. Under this current arrangement, the Edgecombe County schools are 57.2% minority, Nash Rocky Mount are 50.7%. Under the proposed, if we would go to county line, those numbers would then become, Edgecombe County schools would be 64% minority, and Nash Rocky Mount would remain at 46.1%. So it's not a great difference there. Any difference is certainly not good, but it certainly doesn't make the term that I heard from one comment during this process that it would make us have an all-white school system. That's anything. And you know, really and truly, folks, at the calendar year that we were in, 2016, that's an item that we shouldn't have to, or we really shouldn't talk about. It just doesn't matter. I get a little bit upset when that comes up because some of them are directed to me personally, and I'll just say, if you think Robbie Davis thinks like that, I'd appreciate it if you'd spend a little bit more time getting to know me, quite frankly, because that's just not something that I get hung up on at all. Eric, if you could go to the map. The map itself is what, to us, makes it very clear that this item does not split Rocky Mount. On this map, you'll see the Nash Rocky Mount school system is in blue. The Edgecombe County school system located within the city of Rocky Mount is in yellow. So you'll see that there is a significant amount, actually more land area in Edgecombe County in the city of Rocky Mount that goes to Edgecombe County schools than it is that go to Nash Rocky Mount schools. Now, number of students, it is not the majority, but there still is a very large number of students that go to Edgecombe County schools that are already living in the city of Rocky Mount. And we all know why that is like that. There's really no need of us going back through that again. But the county line merger is the only thing that would get that map like it really should be, and all of the students going to the county in which they reside. It's just not fair to those students in Edgecombe County, and I know some people say, why are you worried about Edgecombe County students? I worry about all students, quite frankly, whether they're Edgecombe, whether they're Halifax, whether they're Nash, but it's just not fair to have the city providing extra funding for children on Ann Street that live on one side of the street and not on the other side of the street, and that's what we got going on. That's pretty much where we are. I'd like to ask my other board members, is there any points that I have left out that y'all would like to make. As I said, we've been doing this a long time. There is a bill that is ready in the House that Jeff Collins has edited, and it was ready at the end of the last session to move forward with this. We feel like we have the votes in place to enable this to happen, but it needs to be resolved, as many people have said, at the local level. We need to come to an agreement. It doesn't really need to be resolved in Raleigh, but it's just an item that we've got to get resolved, quite frankly. The bill has had a lot of time spent on it. I think it's a good bill. I think it's a very fair bill. It enables any students within the bill that are currently in high school to finish high school where they're at. If they're in the 9th grade at Rocky Mount High School, they would finish school there. And it would be our challenge to work to resolve the issue of the high school itself. As Eric said, there are plenty of seats available in the 3 high schools in Edgecombe County for those 400 plus students currently going to Rocky Mount, but it is a logistic problem. The distance is not any further. If you, for instance, on Ann Street, if you have a child living there on Ann Street, they go to one of the Edgecombe County high schools now, and you can't get on that map any more than about 1.5 miles further than what your current students are already doing to go to Southwest Edgecombe. And it's not any further distance than some of the Nash County children are going to Southern Nash. It's a much greater distance for some of ours than it would be for anybody living in the Nash Rocky Mount school system on the Edgecombe side to go to Southwest or Northwest High School, either one. So yes, it is a potential problem and something that needs to be worked on, but it's not something that the 2 boards couldn't put their head together and come up with a solution on. And I think that, Mr. Chairman, is the presentation we'd wish to make, and I'll turn it back over to you, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I have a proposal here that I'm going to throw out, and I'm going to ask our Assistant County Manager to pass each commissioner a copy of what I'm going to present. Make sure the press get a copy. I hope we have enough copies for that. And I'll go on and get started. First of all, you heard Commissioner Davis report there at the end that Representative Jeff Collins is already prepared, if we don't resolve this, to go with a bill county line. Each county have its own, take care of its own students for educating them. This proposal is to hopefully that we can resolve it and the school system stay intact as it is. And I got 5 things here that I want to present. Edgecombe County be responsible for 100% of the capital projects on the Edgecombe County side of Rocky Mount, including maintenance costs. And that is, if any new schools or anything is built on the Edgecombe County side, that Edgecombe County would be responsible for it. And we think that that's better than they putting 13 or 11% into all capital projects across the entire system. Edgecombe County be responsible for the proportionate amount of maintenance costs at Rocky Mountain High School. With the number of students from Edgecombe County side attending Rocky Mountain High School, we can proportion it out on a percentage basis for maintenance costs. Edgecombe County be responsible for funding the per student funding on an equitable basis with Nash County, meaning that Rocky Mountain would not be making up the difference there for the operation of the schools. All elementary and middle school students residing on the Edgecombe County side of Rocky Mount that are located in the Nash Rocky Mount school system attend schools on the Edgecombe County side of the city. All Edgecombe County students in grades 9 through 12 attend Rocky Mount High School. Some of us on the board, we're not in a majority. We are trying to resolve this without having to go through the General Assembly on a county line basis. That if we can get into an agreement, and we can't wait too long because the legislature is going into session, I believe next month, and they got the votes to do what they want to do. You saw that yesterday. And we're trying to hit it off with some funding agreement with Edgecombe County that we can keep the system as is. And any of you commissioners want to make a statement in connection with this?
Mr. Bellfield, thank you. I would just say that, you know, you have mentioned this to us in the last 2 days. We have not come to any agreement on it on our side yet. Really haven't had the time to dissect it and fully understand what it means, but certainly we would be willing to spend due diligence on your proposal as presented. Any other comments?
Richardson, you have anything to say?
No, I think, like you said, I think we all need to consider the proposals and what it will benefit us on. And I'm just hoping and praying that we can all come together and work out a solution that will benefit our children in the coming years. And it is my belief that we can do it without going through legislators and all to do that. And we'll all come together and do what's right for the children, not necessarily what we as individuals would think would benefit them. So I'm in accordance, just study, and I fully believe it can be done with the funding issue. It can be worked out and be done without going to the, I think everybody know I've already said I do not accept the proposal of a county line merger. I do not, because I believe as adults we can work it out with the funding issues. That's the way it can be done and done right.
Commissioner West, you have anything? You have anything? Comment?
I just kind of wanted to add that because we've been talking about this and talking about funding, and we all understand money and funding. My main concern all along has been the students. The students got to have an education, and every one of us on our board understand that. I just have a problem that all of a sudden we stand up and tell this child here that you got to go to here, you got to go to there. My grandchildren live in Rocky Mount, and they went to Southwest. Let me tell you something. You can get to Rocky Mount Senior High twice the time you can get to Southwest one time with that traffic out there on 43 in the morning. But we need to look at funding, but the main thing we need to be concerned is that we educate the children. Our future depends on those children that's in the school system and that's going in the school system. And my board knows, and I agree with y'all on most things, that all along my concern has been the children. I mean, money's all these things, but money cannot buy an education.
Commissioner Barnes, you have a comment?
Well, just like Commissioner Davis said, we haven't really had time to dissect and process your proposal. But my question to the Edgecombe County Commissioners is, why wouldn't you want to educate your own students? That's all.
Well,
Just a minute, just a minute. You have a comment, Commissioner Allen?
No, sir. I'm listening.
Okay. All right. You have a comment?
Well, I have one myself, and I'm always have a one beside myself, you know, that's about it. But all this thing should be done by Nash County people or Edgecombe County people, not through the legislature. It should be done here because it should not, because it's our county and it's not belong to, and it don't belong to just the 7 members on our board or your board or whatever. It belongs to Nash County and Edgecombe County people. That's funding all the bill anyway. And we're talking about people, not about dollars and cents or what population they're in or nothing else about it. But it's Nash County and Edgecombe County's people's choice, not the legislature's choice. That's my problem.
Okay, well, I will say this too. I'm not for county line merger, and I've been there from day one. Haven't changed, but I do hope that we can resolve this by working out a different way of funding and leave things as is. I think it would be in the best interest of the twin counties that we do that for many, many reasons that I could name, but I won't bother to get into all of that. So, Mr. Chairman, Edgecombe County Board, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I think at this time, according to the agenda, it's a discussion about maybe some of the points that both presenters made, and for us to have a conversation of agreements and or disagreements. Maybe I'll try to start it off and start off by saying, and maybe, you know, in our presentations, I think we all maybe got what we consider to be the facts that we put up, and we differ on some of those facts. I do disagree with that cities do not, the general statutes give and they take. And in this instance, we're dealing with a school system that the part of a school system has never been a part of, in my lifetime, of the Edgecombe County school system, but we have always paid the perpetual expenditure of those children. There you have a Roanoke Rapids City school system. So what the general statute says in one statute and what the legislature will do, the power of the legislature is to do what a consensus of most in the past, a consensus of the total local delegation would present to that body. It might be different now. I will agree that you do need to look at legislations, okay? But that legislation does not need to be something that's mandated from one board to another. There are things in this proposal that we can agree to. But an agreement is what it is. An agreement is when the bodies affected by legislation would get together, talk about it, and come up with a proposal to their local delegation that would be a consensus. We can agree on most things. We can't agree that one board tells this board where the funding should come from. Rocky Mount has always participated in the funding of, in the past, what was Rocky Mount school system. I was a part of the 1992 legislation. I was a city council member. And at that time, it was an agreement that those were our students. Our county we have a number of partnerships with Nash County. We partnership in the airport. We get no benefit, if there's revenue generated from economic development in that area, that tax base goes to Nash County. We have no sharing arrangement. And we have never, this is the only situation that's come to our attention that it begins to boil down to where we want to count this money, what we send. We can appreciate the presenters a proposal of some of the majority members of Nash County Board in terms of how they feel good about what they are doing for us. But we don't feel good about what you're trying to do to us. We need that. We do believe that, and this is a very good start. We do believe that we need to talk, but we also need to talk. Nash County does not need to determine for us the funding partners. We can meet what they are requesting. We can meet these, but we have to sit with all of our funding partners. There is an agreement, but when the body says you can't get money here, that's kind of tough. And meeting and diplomacy is one thing, but mandates are somewhat hard to swallow as it relates to this is what we will take or else. And we will be happy to, and we have considered a lot of the things, and we do agree with some of the things that the presenter said. And we can agree with the new legislation. But that new legislation needs to be a consensus of the funding, the funding partners that have been in place, and not tell us where we need to get the money from to meet what you have said to be, you believe to be our obligation. And when the facts and figures come in, if those are our obligations, and talking with my board, we have a willingness to meet those obligations. Any comments further from any of our members?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Ms. Bell.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Bellfield's ideas here are completely new. Our financial officer is not familiar with it. Mr. Evans is not familiar with it. It looks like it might be promising once we have a chance to study it and look through it. I don't know what kind of success he could have with his board in a matter such as this. But my concern has always been, as Mr. Davis knows and has pointed out in a couple of presentations that I've heard him make, is the lack of funds that's been spent on the Edgecombe side of Rocky Mountain. To be taxed by the citizens of Edgecombe County, to be taxed, and that money spent in Nash County, it rubs me to the bone. Now, whether we got students over there, and I understand that, but those students over there generate federal funds, they generate grants of all kinds. There's a lot of benefits with having those kids in Nash County besides just the amount of money you receive. Now, they are Rocky Mount kids. They live in the city of Rocky Mount. And Rocky Mount for over 20 years has felt an obligation to help pay that cost. And what the problem is with you, I don't know. Mr. Penny has said, he told me personally, and he told you, Mr. Davis, that he could make arrangements so that that gap money came from the Edgecombe side of Rocky Mountain and not involve the taxpayers on the Nash County side. Now, I don't know what the problem is, because, you know, that sounds to me like a compromise in itself that should be equitable for everybody. It seems to me that your only solution is county line merger. You want to separate the schools right down the railroad track. Now, if that's true, then we need to say that's it. Because Mr. Wiggins has just pointed out, we can work with you on the financial issues. I don't think we got any problem working on the financial issues. I'm not saying that we're gonna bend over backwards on everything that you're asking for. But I'll say this, we will work with you. But if we're dealing with an issue where you're not gonna be satisfied with anything except county line, we're just wasting our time. And we don't wanna do that. So we need to get that out in the open right now. I asked you the last time Mr. Wiggins and I met with you.
Mr. Felton,
Yeah.
I think Mr. Davis has presented the majority position.
That's true.
So it is not Mr. Davis' position. It is at least 4 members of those boards.
Well, I'm just quoting what he said at the last time you and I were together.
He is quoting the position of 4 members.
Well, let's ask them if the 4 members are saying that it has to be county line or nothing. That's what we need to know. I get the impression that that's what it is. Can we ask them that?
Well, we can, you've already asked them, but we are dealing here. If when they get the opportunity, they want to respond, they will. Mr. Wood?
Mr. Chairman, to review some of the past actions of the Nash County Board of Commissioners. Initially, the ladies and gentlemen of the Nash County Commissioner presented 3 options. One was a county line merger, in which Mr. Felton has discussed and has been discussed this morning. One is an option would be to remove the city of Rocky Mount from the gap funding. And a third option was to leave everything the same as is, which has been stated by the majority of the Nash County Commissioner as not an option. So there are 2 options remaining. Proceed with the proposed legislation and go along county lines, or remove the city of Rocky Mount from a funding source of the gap. I would ask the Nash County Commissioners, or a majority of there, so if Edgecombe County Commissioners were to agree to close the gap that the city of Rocky Mount has been closing in the past, to remove the city of Rocky Mount's funding from the school system, would you consider having your delegates or our delegates not sponsor a bill in the General Assembly to have county line merger? If the city of Rocky Mount was no longer in the funding source, we as a majority, if a majority of our board assumed that responsibility, in good faith and negotiation, would you remove the legislation or have the legislation removed for county line merger?
Any other comments or questions from our board?
I got
Yes, sir. Mr. Ball. Mr. Ball.
After a lot of discussion about this thing for the last couple of years, I go back and forth and I'll listen. But first of all, I'd like to directly address one thing that Ms. Barnes said. It's not very hard for me to decide why we should educate these children. I don't see it as a railroad track line. I don't see it as a Nash Edgecombe line. I was born and raised in Rocky Mountain, educated in Rocky Mountain school system. There's always been a Rocky Mountain school system. The city of Rocky Mount is no secret, appears to be divided everywhere. We do not need another division in this town. There is somewhere other than Nash County. Nash County and Edgecombe County are tied together and forever will be tied together whether we like it or not. A division down that railroad track for the school system is not the answer to this problem. And I don't appreciate somebody questioning why we don't want to educate our children. As well as Mr. Wooten and myself both feel, we were more than willing to bridge the gap to pay the money. In effect, we feel like we've already paid that money and we have facts to back that up. So I feel like we're meeting our obligations not just by statute, but by actual facts in terms of dollars and cents that go to Nash County. I do think it's grossly unfair to take one high school and keep mentioning 37%, 37%, 37%, because the Nash Rocky Mount school system, it's not Rocky Mount Senior High. So I hope we can come back to the table, discuss this, look at the facts, not what I say, not what you say, let's look at the facts of the dollars and the cents that are provided from us. And I hope as adults we can come to an agreement. And I want to close by just saying one thing. I own and operate a business in Wilson, North Carolina, and have for 38 years. I would dare say that there is not a month that goes by, and this is being very truthful, that I don't have people to come in my business and talk about the city of Rocky Mount and the division that is here. And I'm just telling you, in my 5 years as a county commissioner, it just seems like we cannot get over division because of those railroad tracks, and we've got to live with them. Everything doesn't really come down to dollars and cents. If you ask my wife, I'm probably the most unemotional person in this world. But if I were a board of one and I were to decide today of what to do, I would leave the system as it is simply because of the division it would cause by splitting the Nash Rocky Mount school system and making the Edgecombe Nash. And I know everybody loves to look at a dollar and what we can get and what we can do with it, and I do too. And I'm the last person on earth not willing to pay his fair share. I'm always willing to pay our fair share. So I would just simply close by telling you that I don't think paying our fair share is an issue. If that's your only axe to grind, you need to put axe up. Thank you.
Sorry.
I too took issue with Ms. Barnes' comment because we do ensure educating our Edgecombe County children. You can ask anybody in Edgecombe, Nash County, our school system. But the thing I have is that looking at your nuclear plan, although some things seem feasible, as a parent, if I was a parent that had children at Rocky Mount Senior High and children at those 5 schools that you're saying should be Edgecombe County students, I would have a problem with you're going to allow my high school students to stay where they are, but you're going to make their little sister and little brother have to make a total change. So that's going to be a total change for that parent because they're going to have to make all new arrangements. Because where the high school child might have been the caretaker until mother got home, now these children are going to be in other schools away from Rocky Mount High School because you've made them change elementary and middle school, but you're going to allow the high school to continue. As a parent, I would have a little bit of problem with that because your 8th grader, what does that child have to look forward to? They will not be able to go to Rocky Mount Senior High because you've moved them to an Edgecombe school. And once they get to 9th grade, then they wouldn't have the option of going to Rocky Mount Senior High School.
From high?
Mr. Chairman, I listened very attentively, and I've been serving in the Edgecombe and Nash County through my churches for 37 years. And I've heard this for many years. And what I heard this morning, I would like to reserve my right to keep quiet because the press is here and it's not a preaching sermon. But there is a division in this attitude that's still going on because of what I heard this morning. And I hope and pray that somewhere we can come to our senses and realize that we are responsible for educating our children, and they ought to have the best opportunity to learn without going to school with an attitude that is given them by the adults that they have to live with. And that's all I'm going to say right now, because the press is here, and it's not right to do what we're doing and to have the reasons for doing it. And I'm finished.
Any other board member comment?
Want to hear from me either?
I addressed my comments to Mr. Davis because he was their presenter and he has been in the public eye, the spokesman for this position. Is that not true, Mr. Davis?
I would take that to be true, yes, sir.
And the only reason I did let it know that he was speaking for the majority.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand. That's what I meant.
Okay. Mr. Bellfield, back.
Before this was put together, I did discuss this with those that represent the majority before I put this together. What this is exactly what I discussed with you all. This is just a proposal. I'm not throwing it down your throat and saying that this is what you got to do, but we do need to work on the funding, and I'm gonna use the word, and it needs to be done pretty quickly. As I said, the General Assembly meets next month, somewhere about middle of the month. I'm not sure. Anyway, next month. And if we have not at least made some progress on this thing, that legislation gonna be introduced for county line. I'm trying to head it off and praying that we won't have to get to that. It said prayer changes things, and all you got to do is believe in it and get it in your heart. But you need to be praying individually. Individually.
But Mr. Chairman, I think right now what we probably need to do is not necessarily go from a board to board. If there's just any conversation that needs to be happened, let's chime in. If there ain't, go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Well, I would just like to address the comments from Mr. Felton, Mr. Boswell, Mr. Wooten. We, some months ago, gave a resolution to the Edgecombe County Board that we voted on unanimously, which in my packet, we didn't show it on the thing, but it says basically, and I hate to use this word because y'all think we're dictating something, and we're really not dictating anything, but the final funding inequity resolution. We outlined in that resolution what we felt would make things fair. We've been working on this for over a year. We think basically our majority feels like that we've just been stalled without any resolve. This resolution was put on the table. It does not include county line merger. If that could happen, we agreed that we would certainly live with that. I think it, quite frankly, our board majority feels like that we are kicking the can down the road, but we made that offer in good faith, and we certainly live by that offer. But we felt like y'all have ignored the offer and have pushed us to the point by basically delaying that we have no other choice what to do. We haven't pulled this resolution off the table, but it would have to include current expense, capital, as well as long-term capital. And it would have to be done on an equitable formula that which we think the only way you could do it, but certainly it's up for discussion, is how many students each one of us have in the school system. That's the offer we made. I think it was very clear. If you don't have it, we'll be tickled to death to send it back to you again, but I know you got it. But why we're here today saying we need to move forward is simply because we have exhausted all of our abilities to negotiate with you a fair funding formula because you haven't communicated with us, and we think this is a very fair offer. I don't know how more fair it can be than to look at the number of students each year and we pay our part. To keep Rocky Mount into funding, I don't think would ever be agreed to by this board, simply because no matter what you do, our citizens are going to be paying double when Rocky Mount puts money in it, unless Rocky Mount wants to put the same amount of money for all students that live in Rocky Mount, and that would be fine. I don't know.
I guess I'm asking the question is, what makes your formula right and ours wrong? I think the discussion needs to be what is the right formula and not what is your formula. And again, we're here to try to resolve this issue because I don't see it as a problem, just an issue. And that's what I'm hoping that we can do is resolve the issue and keep our students learning and with the right attitude of why they're learning.
Mr. Wu?
Mr. Davis, and you stated that this has been presented. You're saying that if we today move forward, that a majority of this board will close the gap that the city of Rocky Mount currently spends. You guys will use your influence to remove the bill.
Does your question include all three pools of money?
Well, the capital expense pool, we've already shown over the last 20 years we've met proportionally. I see no reason why that wouldn't continue on. And if anything, we'd like to have maybe negotiations to, talk about how that money's spent, since $10 million of it's been spent in facilities strictly in Nash County. But historically, Edgecombe County has sent over their proportionate share of capital expense to the tune of $134 million, and your CIP predicts $136 million in the future.
Mr. Wooten, that is a point we do not agree on, but the numbers are numbers, and you know, certainly would be up for negotiation. Moving forward, we've got to have a partner in. Now, there are two kind of capitals. The maintenance side of capital, there's no dispute that you've always done your part. The capital is where the rub is, and it is where the real big rub is moving forward.
What if, since our numbers are in dispute, how about we mutually select a third party, an accounting firm, a reputable accounting firm, or financial analyst, to review the numbers and come up with an impartial results, so that we can resolve the capital expense over what's been spent and what's proposed to be spent. But if we as a majority of this board were to take the city of Rocky Mount out of the funding, can we get a commitment from your board that you will remove legislation that will divide the schools?
Mr. Wooten, I can't speak for my board. I can only say that offer we have made to you with no response thus far. Any response you give us, I think, would be looked at very diligently and in all fairness, yes.
As far as this capital funding and all the funding, for that matter, we have tried to have our managers and your manager, our financial people and your financial people, get together and work that out. That's what we want to do. We want to see, you might owe us money. We sort of think you do from the last year. We think you owe us money for last year. But that's immaterial. What we want to go by is what our financial people say and what your financial people say. Now, they have tried to get together, but they haven't been successful because there's been some kind of blockage that kept it from happening. But that's what we need to do. We need to have them tell us, not you, not me. I don't know how much we've actually spent on capital in Nash County. I know we helped pay for that new high school out there. I do know that. And I know we have, my financial people tell me that we have done what we're required to do. And I don't see why we wouldn't.
Totally agree. You have done what you're required to do.
Okay. Well, you know, I have the understanding that we've taken care of what you expect us to do. Now, if that's wrong, that's the hanging point. That's where we need to negotiate. And with, as Mr. Wooten said, Rocky Mount out of the picture. And if we're willing to talk about that, then you should be willing, in my eyes, to take the county line issue out of the picture, because we don't want that. And I hope you don't want it. That's what my hanging point.
Well, I'm very upfront. I think that is the only long-term solution that is available, because we'll be talking about.
That's what I asked you a while ago. If we're going to keep on going there, then I don't see, we're going to have to fight it out in the legislature probably.
Ms. Harris?
With all that talk about capital, how do we still guarantee that the schools on the Edgecombe side have still not gotten their equality as far as capital improvements, which your board and Nash Rocky Mount School Board would have to allocate? So as you said, we should be upset when we look at the capital improvement where we were, but why weren't you, when you were allocating the money for capital improvements, that those 5 schools on the Edgecombe County side were not getting looked at like the rest of the schools? And that's not left up to us. That would be the Nash Rocky Mount School Board and Nash County Commissioners who have been given the capital improvement money. So what's the guarantee that these schools would get the needed care that they've been needing all these years when it's been overlooked for years? So how would we guarantee they would still get their fair share, which they haven't gotten, or OR Pope would be closed?
We can't give you that guarantee. It's not in our domain to be able to give you that guarantee. It's a school board item.
That's right. Capital improvement is a school board item in Edgecombe County and in Nash County.
Right.
Well, if we can come up with an agreement similar to what I propose here,
That would be
you'll be,
optimal.
that money will be there for Edgecombe County schools on the Edgecombe County side. That's what I propose. That's what I propose. They have been neglected, and I have called it to the officials of the school system. I didn't speak to the total board about it, but I called it to their attention that, especially the O.R. Polk situation, 4 years before it got like it did. So.
And of course, an important thing, Mr. Chairman, that we've all got to realize is we have a declining population and we have way more facilities than what we need or that we can financially support moving forward. We've got to close some of these facilities up. And when we close one, we can't repurpose it for another item because it's still on your books to have to maintain. We've got in Nash County alone 3 to 4 schools that we shouldn't be in today. And I'm sure you've got some on the Edgecombe side as well. We've got to recognize that, which is another whole battle in itself.
Well, I have to say this, Mr. Davis, with all due respect to you, okay? I don't mean this as an insult to you. But in Edgecombe County, we let the school boards run the school.
Right.
It's not our responsibility. Well, our responsibility is when they come to us and they say, we need or we want to do this, then we have to decide whether we can do that or not. But as far as what schools they close, when they close them, where they close them at, nothing to do with it.
We have nothing to do with it either.
Well, it doesn't sound that way, sir.
Well, it's obvious that we don't do that. Would be some of them closed.
Okay. Well, I'll let it stand for what it is.
Are there any other comments from any board member, from any, either of the board, Mr. Chairman?
Well, the question I have, where we go from here?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we had a point, go ahead.
Well, much like Mr. Belfield, I don't want to leave this room today until we take care of the children and I want to have something in place. I don't know how we could go about it officially or not, but if we can say that as a majority of the Edgecombe County Commissioners are willing to remove Rocky Mount from the gap funding, and in good faith that the majority of Nash County Commissioners say that if that does occur from our board, that you will remove the proposed legislation, I would feel good that we've got resolution today.
Mr. Wooten, would that be your proposal?
It is my proposal. That is my proposal.
To remedy this situation?
Yes.
You hear what he said? He said gap funding.
City of Rocky Mount gap funding.
Well, again, Billy.
Hold it. Excuse me, go ahead, Mr. Outlaw. You go ahead.
I'm just asking, is that what you consider to be the remedy to this situation?
That and to address Mr. Davis' concerns, and I as well, that we mutually agree upon a reputable accounting firm or financial analyst to review the numbers that we both are presenting and come up with an equitable solution on the capital expenditures in the future. If the City of Rocky Mount's funding is gap funding is out and it's strictly Nash County and Edgecombe County, and we agree to engage a mutually agreed upon third party to analyze the capital expenditures, and I believe as a majority will continue to fund our proportionate share of capital expenses, will you remove the legislation from the General Assembly to divide these schools?
Are you saying that in addition to removing Rocky Mount, you would agree, your board would agree to pay its proportionate share of capital dollars, all capital dollars?
We have in the past, and that would have to be left up to the board for discussion majority, but we have shown ourselves in 20 years that we have paid our proportionate share. There's no reason to think that we would not pay our proportionate share moving forward.
My question is a simple one, Mr. Wooten. Would your board agree today to pay your proportionate share based on your number of students in the Nash Rocky Mount school system for all capital needs?
I as an individual, I can't speak on behalf of the whole board, but I as an individual would say yes, that we have in the past, and I would agree, and we would in the future.
I'm not saying what you've done in the past because you followed the law, but for all capital needs in the Nash Rocky Mount school system, including the debt service on those needs, your board today will agree to that remedy, in addition to the gap funding. I'm speaking, hold on, I'm speaking to Mr. Wooten now. I'm asking Mr. Wooten that question.
I would, because we have to look at what has happened in the past to predict what's in the future. And we have in the past, and I believe I would in the future. I can't speak for a majority of the board, just like you can't speak for a majority.
Well, I can only speak for myself like
Yes, sir.
you, Mr. Wooten, but I can say today that if your board will agree to close the gap funding by handling that from your board, and your board will agree to pay your proportionate share of all capital monies, including debt service, then I think we may have somewhere we can go. Now, are you and I in agreement on that?
You and I are.
Okay. What?
That's you and him.
That's you and him.
That's
right.
Here's the problem, Mr. Wood.
This is where it starts. This is where it starts.
But here's the
There has to
problem,
be other
Mr. Wood.
consideration on that.
Here's the problem, I think. I think here's the problem. This board, from day one, has never pushed county line. This board, when we started this discussion, we have always advocated for equitable funding based on proportionate share. Anybody on my board disagree with that, then please speak up now. We had a joint meeting with this board, some members of this board, and the city of Rocky Mount, and we walked away from that meeting and no one disagreed that there were funding inequities. The problem with the whole situation, including with our board, is that what you and I just agreed on, no one else will agree to. And so we're always left with things as they are. And so what is the remedy to the solution other than kicking the can down the road? Now, I don't have an issue with Edgecombe County. I was born in Edgecombe County. But I do have an issue with taking Nash County taxpayer dollars and moving them across the county line. And I believe your board, Mr. Evans, has expressed that same concern that your board has moving Edgecombe dollars across the county line. Now, back to Mr. Bellfield's proposal, Ms. Harris, unless I misheard Ms. Harris, she has indicated from her comments that she would really have an issue with your proposal, Mr. Bellfield, because she's got an issue with kids going through the 8th grade and then not being able to go to the Rocky Mount High School. We realize you've got a high school issue.
Actually, that's reverse, I think, from what it's actually said. All Edgecombe County students in grades 9 through 12 would attend Rocky Mount High School. I think that was a misunderstanding.
They would for a grandfathered period of time.
I didn't see a grandfather time.
Well,
that is if we.
Well, that would be.
I think that's the Board of Education.
That is.
Well, I'm going to speak to the Board of Education because this majority on this board have been criticized for a number of things related to the Board of Education. We've been criticized for recruiting for board members. We've been criticized for trying to run the school system. Now, I can tell you, open session, have no problem saying this, I had no involvement in any school board races in Nash County. The only person that I spoke to and encouraged to run was Steve Williams. Steve lost that race to a very good man, Wayne Dodd. Steve Williams and I worked together for a long time. He would have been a very good board member for the Nash Rocky Mount School Board. But our board has a good relationship with our school board, and we are not trying to dictate to them and tell them what to do. And I believe you're trying to do the same thing, but we get criticized for that. But here's one thing that if you want to criticize me for being a good steward of Nash County taxpayer dollars, then feel free to continue doing that. We are putting, you saw the graphs up here, we're putting over $20 million per year into the Nash Rocky Mount school system to educate the children. We're putting a lot of money in that system. So we are doing what is appropriate to educate those children. But every time we have this discussion, it seems to me that, and I'm not trying to be offensive here, but either you guys are not listening or you don't understand what we're saying. we're saying there's a gap differential. That gap differential, if you went back to what Mr. Farley recommended to you guys as a budget increase, that just, if you take your student, your teacher supplement up to 10%, for example, that's a wonderful thing. That's where we'll be this year. But that continues to reduce that gap. By and large, the bigger issue is the capital money. You got $136 million worth of capital on the table. 25 million of that dedicated to Edgecombe County. You're talking about $333,000 in the current year. And by the way, Mr. Evans, I believe that number was short by about 400,000. You could confirm that with our...
I would ask that we get other parties involved to
Well,
substantiate.
And how long would we get them involved?
Until they come up with the facts. It shouldn't take long. Just because you present a number and you disagree with the 333,000 doesn't make that correct, because we have a number that we feel is compassionate about.
I'm not disagreeing with your 333,000.
Oh, I thought you were. I thought you said it was 400,000 short. I'm sorry.
It is a little short. It is. But
well, then you are disagreeing. Then.
I'm disagreeing that that's $400,000 that's not shown in that. But the bigger issue, Mr. Wooten, is the larger capital issue and the debt service associated with it. That's the bigger issue. But you and I are in agreement. Now all you got to do is go back to your board and convince them that you're right. Good luck.
Well, we would like to see maybe you also go back to your board and Mr. Belfield convince you that he's right. Go ahead, Reverend Hines.
Is that capital outlay based on based on students or?
It is a big percent, as I would understand. It has been in the past. There'd be no reason it would change in the future. If we're 11.8% today.
I mean, I don't have a calculator and I can't do this type math in my head, but if you take 136 million and whatever the number is, 11.8%, that would be your share.
And it has been in the last 20 years, and we have paid in good faith and agreed upon.
Well, Mr. Outlaw, here's our dilemma, sir. We are an independent board of commissioners in Edgecombe County, and you're asking us to abdicate our responsibility to our kids, our students, and let you make decisions that could be 30 years from now, could be 10 years from now. We can work with you on what's happening right now, but I would never, ever give you authority to vote for me on how you spend money in Nash County that's coming from Edgecombe County. I can promise you that.
We've been doing it for 20 years.
Well, I'll die before I vote to change it.
Mr. Felton, you've already abdicated that
Well,
responsibility.
just on a limited scale. That's defined
See, obviously
and
you don't
doesn't change.
understand that.
Well,
You have
I
already
don't know what you're
abdicated
gonna
that
do in the
responsibility.
future. We're talking about what happens right now.
Well, moving ahead.
Can I
Mr.
make
Voss.
one more comment? I'm gonna put our finance officer on the spot here. But I'd like to ask y'all a question first. Are you considering lottery funds, or you consider debt service that we've already been assigned in your current figures? Because I understand, am I correct? That they left those two figures out.
They left everything that we were sending directly to the schools. They did not have that in the calculation.
You think we don't understand, but let me say this, we understand very well. We've had many meetings with our finance officer. I have 110% faith in her. It's not your figure or my figure, it's what those figures say that count. My finance officer tells me, and I believe her, that we have paid, if you consider the sources. I'm not talking about the city of Rocky Mountain. I'm talking about lottery money. I'm talking about debt service. What else is it, Ms. Crabtree?
The restricted sales tax that we have for schools, I divide it between our schools and their schools. Everything we send, whatever I do for our schools, Edgecombe County schools, we send per pupil to the Nash Rocky Mountain schools. The ADM money and lottery money that have gone to Nash County in that separate fund, you're getting that money based on the students that are in your schools. So that is coming from our students as well.
Is Edgecombe County money going to Nash Rocky Mountain School System?
It's going to Nash County, and Nash County appropriates out of that
We
fund.
agreed with that when we sat down.
I think
So you
difference of opinion.
you agree that there have been a couple sources of funding that you have not looked at before? You don't agree? I do not agree. Okay, well, then Mr. Bootman is absolutely right. We need a third source to look at the funding, if y'all will agree to that, because that seems to be the only difference of opinion.
The financial analysis that was first presented several months ago was prepared in about a week at the request of Senator Bryant. Our finance officer put together a spreadsheet. She excluded the lottery money because we concede that the lottery funds includes funds for the Edgecombe side. So it's a wash. So you take out the lottery funds because on both sides, because the lottery funds are given to the county of Nash based on the total number of students in the school system, and that includes the Edgecombe side. So I believe I'm correct, she took those out of the formula because they're a wash. They are correct. That portion of the funding is sent to the county based on a per student basis. That was one thing.
But it contributes to the deficiency that you say we have.
I don't believe anybody on our board has maintained that there's been a deficiency in the past. The problem is the board was presented with a $136 million capital project, 10-year plan, which every school system by mandate of DPI must do and do it every 5 years. And at that time, the commissioners asked that they present that to your board since y'all are a funding partner, and the word they got back was that there was not an interest in y'all being presented, whether that was the school board wasn't interested in presenting it to you, or whether that was y'all not wanting to get that presentation. We've heard it both ways. But the issue really going forward, and you've addressed one of them with the Rocky Mount gap funding. The other is the long-term capital needs and debt service. Again, right now, up to this point, y'all have done your fair share on what we call capital outlay, year-to-year capital outlay. And the 400 that's missing was lottery funds. In our 3-year deal was lottery funds. So that money is, again, a wash. It's coming from the state and lottery funds, and it's based on per students, including the Edgecombe students. So his figure was correct, $1.39 million. The problem is, we're going to have a presentation next month from the school board. I believe the school board's already approved the proposal for the next 5 years on capital funding. That plan, the second 5 years has a new Edgecombe school, but the first 5 years has a new Red Oak school, which would close 2 or 3 schools, renovations at Spring Hope, renovations at Middlesex. And then the second 5 years, and we didn't draw that up. The architect consultants for the school board drew up that plan. It's only in the second 5 years that a new school, I believe, is planned for the Edgecombe side of Rocky Mount. So the issue is, how are we going to deal with $59 million in spending for that first 5 years, and then beyond there? Is it based on a formula that can be reset every year based on the per student population? Actually, the 11.5 with the 1740, which was the latest number, that was based on 1,914 students. The current year, it's 1,740, so it's gone down to about 11% or 10 point, huh?
I think it's
11.1%. So how are we going to build the new schools that have been recommended by our school board without participation, without an agreement of participation by Edgecombe County going forward, all future capital and debt service?
Well, in the past, we've sent $14 million approximately, of which $4 million has only been spent on the Edgecombe County side. We've already sent $10 million to the Nash County side facility. So, I mean, That's not necessarily a wise decision on our part, but we've shown good faith over 20 years. Why do you not think we wouldn't show good faith moving forward?
Why shouldn't we have the capability and the responsibility to review what you're talking about doing in your school system as well as we do in our own school system? We're not giving them carte blanche to go out and say, yeah, you're going to be able to build 120 something. I think they asked for 123 million. We're not. It will be looked at on a situation by situation and a year by year, and that's what we're asking you that we think is reasonable. I'm not buying into your 10-year plan.
Well, it's not our 10-year plan.
Well, it's somebody's 10-year plan.
It's the school systems.
I don't
Your
care
school
whose-
systems, our school
It don't
systems.
matter to me whose it is.
Okay, the 14 million, if I may.
I'm not buying into a 10-year plan in Edgecombe County.
10 million of that, I mean, some of that went to the new Rocky Mount High School. The majority of it went to year-to-year capital outlay. That's new buses, new copy machines, maintenance of existing buildings. Those dollars have gone into all the schools.
Why don't we divide the funding source and the ongoing capital annual outlay versus the long-term capital expenditure for building projects? We have the formula.
It's already divided.
It's already divided.
It's proportional.
That's correct.
Right, there's
So
three.
we served our point when we did the new Rocky Mount High School. We sent our proportionate share.
Based on what you
No,
borrowed.
you've seen your proportional share, you've seen your proportional share of your bond proceeds.
You're saying that we did not send our proportionate share. See, that's where we might need to have a third party come
We
in and
sent what
speak.
we sent what we were supposed to send.
Under the statute.
What you were supposed to
Absolutely.
send under the statute.
By
For
statute.
total in our.
So why can't we negotiate and sit down that we have the current capital outlay annually for upgrades and maintenance?
We do.
And then
You're
do
paying
the
that.
buildings and then talk about based on student population in each facility.
There's two capital outlays. There's a capital
Right.
outlay, which is the 1.39, plus we've added for a 3-year period, 400,000 from the lottery fund. We're hoping we'll have enough in the 3rd year of that agreement from lottery funds. If not, we'll have to take it out of our general fund. But then there's capital construction, renovation, additions, and then the debt service associated with that future. Your proposal, I agree, y'all should have a seat at the table. When the school board presents a proposal, a long-term 10-year plan to the county, they should also present it to y'all. But the problem is the proposal which you did have on your PowerPoint was that y'all would pay your pro rata share of all future capital and debt service needs. If you have an individual project where you can say, we're not going to do that, if they come to both boards and say, we want to build a new school in Red Oak, which is their #1 priority, to close 2 or 3 schools and replace it with a new facility at Red Oak, isn't it hard for y'all to say we're going to do that without?
Well, that was the agreement in 1992, was it not?
No.
It was not?
No. All the agreement deals with is
You got no
current
capital
expense
obligation.
and capital outlay.
So it was good faith in the Rocky Mount High
Yes.
is the reason we
No,
did
no,
that.
no.
You had to do that
No.
because it was bond.
The statute
Well,
says,
but we chose to elect to do the bond.
no, the statute says anytime you float a bond, you must give a proportional amount to that school system based on the per student, just like you do in current expense.
The reason that we're here is that we've all agreed that we have complied with the statute.
Yes, sir.
Okay? The reason that we're here is they say we ain't doing enough. Okay? Okay. That's the reason we're here. So Aaron, what would have been, okay, of what they think should have been, okay? We're here to attempt to establish some type of agreement to move forward to avoid probably a statute, to avoid the bill being given to the General Assembly to build a wall between our 2 counties. That's why we're here. And what's on the table what has been proposed to us, with us having no options to change it, is what the three options that they put on the line. And based on one comment from the presenter, you know, his preference would be that the county line. And you have stated what you thought was what you would like to see us do. Okay.
Option 2, with discussion.
Well, you stated what you thought you'd like to see us. Mr. Outlaw gave that some consideration. Mr. Davis evaded it, saying that we got to talk about it, okay? Okay, so there is really no agreement in terms of that.
Excuse me, sir, me and Mr. Wood and I have an agreement.
Well, y'all still got it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Okay, okay, y'all have a gentleman's agreement.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, excuse me.
Understand my point is, where I'm at is because we have offered and got no response. Therefore, we have defaulted to option number 1.
And we have counteroffered in this meeting. And that counteroffer has been with a majority of us. We certainly will consider meeting just about everything there. And the option of the majority of this board has been one that we have a funding partner, and that partner is Rocky Mountain, and that we need a meeting with, and they, Rocky Mountain, through a majority of their board, if not all of them, and I can't speak to all of them, has said that they have a willingness to continue some type of funding proposal. And so my suggestion is that we need to have a 3-board meeting. And Nash County had indicated somewhere down the line, if this meeting took place, that they had a willingness to meet. I don't know if they said all 3 boards, but they did say they would meet with Rocky Mountain. I really think that meeting should take place. They still might need to hold their position, but there has been some movement. There's been movement on our board. It's been a movement on all of our board, from where we were and where we are now in terms of, and we have been talking about it, and we've been talking about it on a regular basis, because it is a high priority for us too. And so I don't know.
The only thing there, if Rocky Mountain remains a funding partner, they must fund every student that lives in the city of Rocky Mountain at the same rate.
And that's a consideration for Nash County to put on the board. And that's what our meeting's about, is to see, and that's your stated position in terms of, and I'm assuming that you're speaking for at least the majority of the members of the board.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, even the agreement that Commissioner Outlaw and Commissioner Wooten agreed on, and if that becomes an agreement between the 2 boards, it's still going to have to go to the General Assembly to change the old.
Well, and I guess that's what our major concern is that we would agree that new legislation needs to take place. Mm-hmm. We don't have a disagreement on new legislation.
Well,
our disagreement is on that the bill that is present written is one that we have had no or zero input into it, and we don't believe that the bill should look like that.
Well, we can, as 2 boards, we can get together and draw up the legislation, whatever we agree on, and give it to them, and say this is what the 2 boards have agreed on, and they introduce it. Well, most likely the way that we put it.
We are, you and I, in agreement, and I think you, but we've got to we have to at least come to that point where we do agree.
Well, I know what I'm saying is when we do come to it, whatever we come to, it's got to go and amend what's up there, or either change it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. This board has had option 2 of the 3 options. 1 was the county line, 3 was do nothing, and 2 was option 2. I believe option 2 was a compromise. I believe his proposal is a compromise. You know, let's talk about those two options. Let's talk about option two, where each year we recalculate and y'all are responsible, again, not only for your share of current expense, capital outlay, but future capital construction and debt service. That third thing is really what option two attempts to address for the future. The uncertainty that we will have a funding partner for major capital projects kind of puts us on hold. And so option two, if your board would agree to option two, I believe that is a starting point to work at. Mr. Bellfield's proposal is a second compromise offer by this board. And
Mr. Lamb, can I stop you for a minute?
Yes, sir.
Can I interfere with you?
Yes, sir.
I hear you, but, and I don't hear you because of the fact that it needs to come from your board in terms of, in terms of what, I think in terms of what you putting something on the board that maybe the board members, because I'm reading some faces as you talk, but I think it needs to come from your board.
Well, let it come from our board, and I think we've been very clear with what the options are. Option two has always been the first option, and that's all Mr. Lamb is doing, is regurgitating what this board agreed was our primary option from the get-go.
And option two?
Mr. Wooten and I have totally agreed.
But Mr. Outlaw, did you not add two options to that option?
No, sir.
Mr. Wooten
You
and I
didn't add anything
no, sir,
to it.
Mr.
In
Wooten
other
and I
words,
just
you thought
agreed
all
on
the
it.
time that we should encumber the taxpayers of Edgecombe County for future 10-year expansion of the school system into Nash County. Is that what you think?
I think if you're worried about this school board over here properly handling that money, then the best way to take away that worry is split the systems. And then you don't abdicate your responsibility to Nash County taxpayers to determine what Edgecombe County is going to put into that system. But otherwise, that's what you're doing. You're abdicating that responsibility.
Of course, the other side of that is what we're doing now is fair and equitable and should continue in the future. And then it devolves down to who can win out in Raleigh. And we're going to fight just as hard as you are if it comes to that. We're not going to just sit down and say, yeah, go ahead and beat us over the head when you get ready. If we need to fight you, we will.
I'm not looking to fight, Mr.
Well,
Wilson.
that's what it's devolved
No,
into.
sir, you may be looking to fight, but I'm not looking to fight.
Well, I'm not
too
either,
old
but
to
I'm
fight.
just saying we're not going to bend over and let Jeff Collins say, here's the law. All y'all got to do is vote on it, and here it is. We're not going to operate that way.
Hold your point. You got to go ahead. You had a point. Go ahead. Manager wants to ask a question. Go ahead, Mr. Bellfield.
I guess I just wanted to ask.
Let's let Mr. Bellfield.
This proposal, Commissioner Harris, was to keep the system together as is now, and all the children on the Edgecombe County side will go through the Rocky Mountain school system, and it's not just ones that's going in high school, all of them, but they will attend elementary school. Those on that side will attend schools on that side, because you got room over there to take care of them. Parker is not full. And they can go to middle school over there, elementary school, and then middle school. And then when they get to the 9th grade, then they go on over to Rocky Mountain High School. And what this proposal done, I put this together. I talked with the leading commissioners among the 4 majority before I put this together. And then I let the other 3 know about it, which were more attuned with not having a county line merger. So this is something to think about. I'm trying to head off any legislation that's going to split at the railroad track.
Mr. Chairman, I think our board has made an attempt today to compromise. We've already stated that we're willing to try to remove the city of Rocky Mount from the funding. We've already stated that we are willing to try to bridge the gap ourselves, involving both capital outlays and per student, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, it seems like we're still in disagreement on what that figure is, so I just don't think we can discuss this anymore till we have a current agreed figure from the Nash County Board of Commissioners on exactly what we should, as well as a current agreed statement from us as to what we are funding. And I'm a little, I guess I'm not as educated as some of you, but I don't understand how a fact can't stand on its own. I mean, I don't understand.
To clarify that, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we agree on current expense and capital outlay. The uncertainty and the thing that's got us at a standstill is when the school board approaches us with large capital needs. If we had a formula in place that would be based on the pro rata share of students the prior year, each year we'll recalculate it, just like we do with the gap funding, then that was part 2 of option 2, was that we would commit to a long term. So when they come and say, we want a new school, we know we can go forward with a new school. The Rocky Mount gap funding is only part of option 2.
I understand that, and I understand what you're saying. But I also understand until we come to an agreeable figure, because we can't seem to come to an agreeable figure based on our financial officer and yours. Yes, ma'am. Please inject.
This was all done years ago to avoid this very issue, because we also have a school system that is coming to us with needs that we won't be able to meet all their needs either. But to change that funding from, we are driving from our students that are in our school, that is our responsibility, and then give to your school whatever, and you can assume based on history what we'll be able to give to help participate in your funding. But to change it from an overall to now we're going to do a percentage based on an individual school or project, that's where the issue is. If you say, but what has happened, we've had a presentation that school board has got this plan, this long-term plan, and for the first time, a school has actually come up that's going to potentially have to be on the Edgecombe County side. So now we want to change all of it so that we can say, because this one school's on Edgecombe County side, which is still all the Nash Rocky Mount schools kids, now it's suddenly to change the system. That's when we send money, because we've sent $14 million in 20 years to the Nash Rocky Mount School for you to put wherever the school saw fit to put it.
And Nash County taxpayers have given 25
right.
million.
And I understand that.
Both of you hold your points. Both of you hold your points. Back to the commission.
Yeah, well, relative to what she just said about
Mr. Ball, you had
the school being built on the Edgecombe. Let me finish this right quick, Mr. Chairman.
Back to Commissioners, Reverend Hines. She made her point. She made her point.
I got just one more thing to say. I stand on what I said. Until we can get a figure from you. One moment is Rocky Mountain Senior High and 37%, and then it's 11.8%. We understand that's going to figure. That figure is going to change, but we also understand that our proportionate share is 11.8% of Nash Rocky Mount funding. We need to know what that figure is. I understand, and I could be wrong, that there have been some figures left out. Is that true or untrue? You've not let every report you've given us has been accurate and true.
The report that was given at the time of Angela Bryant's
I don't
meeting,
know about that. I'm asking you. The
but
last report we got was it accurate and true in terms of what we owe
that
you?
was something. We have said at that time we tried to get information from Edgecombe County in a 2 or 3 day turnaround and couldn't get it before we met with Ms. Bryant. So any mistakes or any problems that y'all might have with those figures were a result of not being able to get the proper information.
All I'm saying
but we are saying that the fact is that the numbers, we're not saying on current expense and capital outlay in the past, y'all have been deficient. It's all about the future.
I understand that.
The future of building new schools and how we're gonna fund those schools. And we can't give you an exact figure because until the school board comes to us and says, we want to build this school or we want to build that school. That's why if we had a set percentage based on the population of the two counties in our school system, that we could go forward with this project or this project or that project. Y'all are doing your share again on the bond. The statute says that y'all are only obligated to do a proportional share when you float a bond. If you don't float a bond, you're not required to do anything. We're asking that you start, that we come to an agreement where there is a set percent recalculated each year, where when they come to us for capital needs, we know that 10% of that or 11% of that will come from Edgecombe County.
I understand that, I agree with that, I understand we have to reach a percentage each year based on the number of students. We just can't come to a figure that everybody agrees on so far, and I'm flabbergasted by that. I'm not talking about doing what we're mandated to do, I'm talking about meeting our share, just like Mr. Wiggins said. Get the city of Rocky Mount out, meet our share, whatever the percentage is on students. But we've got to have a figure to start with as best as possible. I understand, and I may be incorrect, that some of those figures that we've not agreed on yet, but we've got to agree on those figures before we can even move forward with discussion and solve the problem, in my opinion.
Don, what you're talking about, in the best estimate we can give you at this point in time, it would cost Edgecombe County somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million a year more. I think that's the number you're looking.
You talking about in capital outlay?
If you talk about current expense,
Okay.
what you'd have to come up with based on history, and this based on history. And if you look at this proposed program and divide it into number of 10 years that we're supposed to do it in, you've got a deficit of about $2.5 million per year that you would have to add to what you've been doing.
Okay.
That's as close as we can give it to you.
That's for capital outlay.
That's for
And that
current
is assuming
expense
that-
and capital
That's for
outlay.
both.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you know, a big concern of mine is on your schedule for replacing or building new school buildings, the one in Edgecombe County that Ms. Crabtree just referred to is not even top priority that you have. With the neglect that's going on in Edgecombe County for the last 20 years, it still is down on your priority list. Now, why should we talk about increasing money to Nash County when on your priority list, the schools on the Edgecombe side of Rocky Mount are down on your list? You need to get your school board to make some.
It's not our list, it's the school
Well,
board list, and
you
that's
don't-
the exact reason.
You
that we
working
need
with
to
the
be
school
tending to
board,
our
aren't you,
own
Mr.
children.
Davis?
Sir?
Aren't y'all working with the school board real close?
We take the list the same way y'all take y'all list. We have no input whatsoever with it.
Okay.
But that's
But all this
that's
discussion,
beside
John,
the
is the
point.
real reason we should just do what the correct thing to do is.
I agree,
And-
I just don't like the future commitment, okay?
Right.
And that is assuming that.
But with that
the
problem, why
board
don't
is
we
going to
both take our
approve.
own kids and educate them and don't worry about the numbers moving forward?
That's assuming that the board is going to approve.
My kids are already educated.
The school board's request, that the county commission is going to approve the school board's request, and most times we don't ever approve what they
That's true.
asking for.
That's true.
It gets slashed to about 10% of what they want most of the time, so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, therein is the real problem moving forward. Is, we may agree that we want to do the regular school next. Y'all may agree you don't want to do it next. So we're gonna be doing this every year moving forward on current expense as well as capital.
Not if we can work on an agreement that we put in statute.
Right,
No, that is the reason that you want a statute change.
that's right.
That's correct.
Okay, and if we can agree on what the statute would be, then we've got that solution. It takes away.
Maybe we could get some
It takes away this argument.
Maybe-
But this is a very good argument.
Yeah, maybe we can get some educational
discussion?
experts to help us with this.
Well, argument, discussion, however I use, don't either one of the terms bother me. It's an argument too. I had some arguments in here. So.
Maybe we ought
I
to
have
look
to
at
use
getting some
discussion at home.
educational
That's why I
experts,
use-
somebody
Okay,
from Raleigh or Washington.
Me and my wife use arguments and discussions, so I got a different argument.
Hey, you didn't hear what I said, I might have the greatest idea of all day. Why don't we get educational experts from people in the education department in Raleigh or Washington and they can look at the whole Twin County operation and see, come back with a recommendation then. Have y'all already done that?
We have employed an expert to do that.
We saw that, and
I
they
don't want
didn't
anybody
think it
in
was the
Washington
best thing
or
to
the
do.
public
Well,
looking out
let
for
us,
Nash
let us,
County's business.
let us make an effort, Scoop,
Mr. Chairman, all I ask is.
and we're gonna try to
What
sum
happened to
this
Council
up after Reverend Hines, unless you got something else. Go ahead, Reverend Hines.
If we gotta keep going through this discussion, all I'm asking for is some common sense. Common sense, not from experts, not, just some common sense issues that we need to resolve and get out of the way so our children can get their education. Whatever we want individually, whatever we see of what the possibilities are, simply resolve this issue and stop discussing it. That's why I don't have meetings like that at church.
Let me ask the question,
I'm getting fuss over now.
Chairman Bearfield, you said it's the first time you've seen this proposal. Is this something that the Nash County
That's the
Board of
first time
Commissioners?
they saw it in writing, but
I'm saying, is this something based on your review of it that you would consider that Commissioner Bearfield put on the table?
I don't understand your question.
Is what a settlement, Chairman Bearfield proposed something a little different than the majority members of the board had approved.
Yes, sir.
Is this something that any of you that maybe have differed from this would consider?
I think we could give you an answer on that Tuesday morning. We need to discuss it as a board first, Mr. Chairman, don't you agree?
I do.
That we will be meeting on Monday.
well, sure, we can discuss.
We'll wait, and
I would propose to say that would make it official. But I propose to say that majority of us agree with that proposal.
and if the majority of you would agree with this proposal, I'll say
But we'll make it official Monday.
this is something our board would certainly review and look at. But is there anything else coming from any of the board?
Can I just make one final
Yes, sir.
comment?
Yes, sir.
Again, Mr. Wooten, you and I are in agreement, but I would make one more comment.
Yes, sir.
Just at first glance at that, I think that is a much better deal, Chairman, for Nash County than proportional share. So I want to hear the discussion of my board.
Yes, sir.
But I think I can be okay with that.
Okay.
I think I could, but I always have to do my due diligence
We
before
know you ain't gonna commit yourself.
I would do it. You told me I pondered too long sometime, but Tuesday morning is not long.
That's a better deal for y'all. It is.
Yes, as he stated. Is there any other comments from any of your board?
Well, I don't consider this meeting futile. Two commissioners, one from Nash, agreed on pulling right now. We all, as total boards, we need to discuss it. And I just heard Commissioner Outlaw said, you bring the rest of your board along, he'll bring the rest of Nash County board along. But the most important thing, we have made progress. And I would say this, as I said earlier, let's don't wait too long, let's keep working. And because there are some people, and there are some people out there in the county that might want to go on and do what they already have in mind, above what commissioners may want to do. But anyway, as long as we're making progress, I think we can get the ear of the legislators up there, especially our local delegations. So let's get back together as quick as possible.
Is it him? Commissioner.
One question, Mr. Chairman. On Mr. Belfield's proposal, you don't have anything in here about Rocky Mountain helping with the funding, whether it's for the whole county or not. Is that?
They took it out.
You took that out?
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Hearing nothing else, we've kind of summed up, I think, where we are. And that is, I think that that we have, our board has a willingness to look at the funding, the issues that Nash County has put on the table. There is some disagreement on our board as to how that might be done, okay? One of the things I'm concerned about as it relates to when you talk about the gap money, we have 56 other students in our county.
5,600
other students in our county that if I were my school board, you're talking about suing, if I gave Nash County students that money, if I was Edgecombe County School Board, I would sue us. Okay? So the thing
that's what one of our funding partners has been doing for 24 years.
Well, I think the school boards need to have the ability to make the funding partners do what they're supposed to. So I'm not opposed to school boards having the ability to sue us. I think that's why they are separate elected boards, so that they can, and responsible for the education of our students, to make sure that we somewhat carry out our responsibilities. So I'm not opposed to that. But we are open to those options, and we are pleased that we've had this meeting. I think it's been a good meeting, a good discussion. Okay, in terms of, but I do recommend that I'm not taking off the table Rock 'em Out as a funding option, and Nash County has at some point in the discussion said they had a willingness to meet with Rock 'em Out, and I think that meeting also needs to occur. That funds it up for us, Mr. Do you have anything else, Mr.?
I have one.
Wait a minute, just a minute.
May I have one question?
Yes, sir.
Where is your money coming from that you're paying your bills with? Is it fair to all the people of Rocky Mount or Nash County? Is it fair? The funding is...
I'm gonna tell you the truth, I probably can't answer that. I really had to ask my finance officer where my money comes from, because it comes from a whole lot of different sources.
I can tell you one place where it's coming from. It's coming out of your utility fund to all the people in this county paying all the bills. Is that not true?
Well, I'll respond to that.
So everybody's participating.
Rock 'em Out's utility fund, in terms of the way the past appropriations has been, in my mind, is the reason that Nash County has outgrown, so they spent all the money in Nash County. Okay? So now there's an argument as to where they spend their utility. When once it gets into Rock 'em Out's budget, they have an elected body to make the determination as to how they spend those funds. And some of what's being proposed is you kind of control how another separate body spend their money. And that's their decision.
We're not trying to control it, but we're trying to give everybody a chance out there. Don't overload what you got left out there to everybody that's not paying any taxes.
And we are separate bodies making those decisions.
Because everybody out here pays on the utility bills. Everybody's paying the money on it.
And we don't agree, and we don't disagree.
I don't agree with that at all, because it's not fair to all the people out there.
And we're going to agree with some of the things that you're saying, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, we'll work it out. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to get back together soon. We're
Well-
close. We've made some progress today.
Do you want to set the date now,
Well-
or wait, we both meet Monday?
Let me see if there's some of the things, the questions that Mr. Boswell raised, and was talking to Mr. Lamb and Mr. Outlaw raised, and those questions, if it's permissible of your board, I always believe that while we make the decision, those of us elected, but if our staffs are in better shape with the figures in terms of getting what the facts are. And so I think I'm open to another meeting, but there needs to be some kinds of, I believe, even if it's with staff and a couple of commissioners, and those commissioners could be the chairman and the chairman designees. Even before we meet, I think there needs to be something, there could be some agreement with that select committee of those few people and what they might be able to propose to us. Is no seat. If we don't have some agreement in some things, I think what we will have is this same kind of meeting. So at least those things that might, I don't disagree that we can meet, but I would want some kind of.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just one of 7 over here, but I'd recommend that we meet on Tuesday and that we come back to the table and we openly say whether or not we would support the agreement that Mr. Wooten and I made in this meeting.
Or Mr.
Or your proposal. I'm willing to come back Tuesday and say whether or not our board and their board would support either one of those 2 agreements. That would be my motion to this board, and Mary seconds it.
All right, you have heard the motion. Any questions? All in favor, this is Nash County. All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Ayes unanimous.
And there are 2, they put 2 things on the table. That was what Mr. Wooten and Mr. Outlaw talked about as to whether their board would agree to that. And the other option was what Mr. Bell feels they're going to decide. Their board is going to decide that those are 2 options that they would support.
Either one of those options will bring this to closure.
What's the, restate y'all. Restate what you agree with.
Hold on just a second.
Go ahead.
Nash County Commissioners have an opportunity to gather on Monday and discuss. We will not have an opportunity until a week from Monday to gather and discuss. I would support that motion amended that we change the date until the Tuesday week from Monday. We need to have a chance to meet.
That's our board, y'all need.
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to set the same motion, just a different date.
We could call a meeting for.
Just for clarification to our county manager and our board, what Mr. Wooten and I discussed was proportional funding, current expense, all capital, including debt service. That's what we agreed to, and that's what I'm saying. We come back and see if their board would agree to that, would our board agree to that, or in deference to that motion, Mr. Bellfield's recommendation. Either one of those, I'm prepared on Tuesday to publicly state whether or not I would support either one or both. Definitely would support one.
You don't have anything in the future in that agreement. You don't have anything in future years in that agreement.
Well, I think
Wait a minute, I don't understand what you mean.
Mr. Felton, let me grab some. Mr. Felton,
I'll tell you
we're not concerned with what they put on their table, okay? And what it's up to us to accept or reject or attempt to modify.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
I think we need to have time in our own board meeting to discuss.
Yeah. Monday night.
Which is a week from Monday.
Right.
And that's sufficient time.
That's plenty.
Okay, that is sufficient time for us to.
This matter doesn't need to be rushed. I mean, obviously, it's been taking a long time, but we're talking in the difference between a few days and maybe 10 days.
I thought your board did meet on Monday.
We meet the first Monday of each month.
We won't have a chance.
We meet each of the next 2 Mondays. Our regular board meeting is the second Monday. Same day theirs is.
Right, you meet in the morning and we meet in the afternoon.
The first Monday of the month, the second Monday.
All this discussion about numbers and trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong, Mr. Boswell, in my simple mind, that all goes away if you've got that percentage. And that percentage is based, it's a simple calculation. They've got X number of students, and Edgecombe's got X number of students attending the school system. It's a simple calculation, you make it every year.
And we had put a proposal on it went to Mr. Mike, I don't know if we got the vote in terms of, we had agreed to those percentages, but it was based on the number of students in that particular school. In terms of if Red is being built and we have no students there, then that was a proposal sent to Mr. Lamb by Mr. Carmer. So we had agreed to the percentages. We had not agreed to the overall percentages in terms of the total school system.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
think-
there are other considerations that we as a board, in looking at, in terms of countering, in terms of, I think we are at the point that we at the negotiating point.
Yeah. Just one more, I hate to belabor this point.
That's point, we're not
but
belaboring it. I don't think
Mr.
we're
Lamb,
belaboring it.
Listen to what I'm saying. What Mr. Wooten and I agreed to is proportional funding for current expense and all capital dollars.
Capital
including
outlay.
Debt service, all capital dollars, including debt service.
Okay, well, I that's not the way I understood it, but
Okay.
if that's what y'all agreed to.
That's what we agreed to.
Okay, I thought he was just talking about the gap funding.
No, it's beyond
It did
gap.
start
It was,
with-
it was started
begin
as a
with,
gap
yeah.
funding.
It
And it's
started
my
as a gap.
understanding, and I need time to talk to staff too, that we have met the capital in the past. So why would
we
we?
met one half of the capital in the past, the capital outlay, not capital construction.
And
That's where I need to go.
And that was the reason, and that's the reason for Mr. Boswell, that's the reason for Mr. Boswell's questions and him consulting with our finance officer in terms of, we feel that if we agreed to that, we won't have to come up with any more money anyway, okay? So that was easy to agree with, and if the figures come up different, then that changes the whole figure. Reverend Hines?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to know, when will we have another joint meeting?
Well, they're going to have a meeting, and based on their meeting, they meet Monday, and they're going to decide on, they've already formalized it in terms of a motion, in terms of the two issues that they're going to put on the table. I think we would have an opportunity to meet, and it appears that some of their items are not, their concerns are non-negotiable, okay? And we'll look at, in our meeting, if that's another meeting that we request, but my request is that we meet with all three boards. Because I'm
Well,
still
y'all
not.
did say after you met with us and just us, that you would agree to meet with Rocky Mountain, is that right?
We would meet with Rocky Mountain individually, is what we said.
But not all three of them?
Well, and I put a request
I don't
on.
intend to ever meet all three boards at one time, because it would be very non-productive.
Why not?
Well, you know,
It would
really,
be very non-productive.
really-
That's your opinion.
Because I've met with some of them before.
But we haven't met with them.
Well, y'all meet with them all you want to.
But then why can't you agree to do something that's right rather than what you want to do?
Mr. Hines, I'm not gonna change my mind on that.
Why not?
Well, Reverend,
I'll be glad to explain it to you in private, sir, but I won't do it in public.
Mr. Chairman,
I think it's a situation where we can call for those meetings. If he don't want to meet, he don't meet. If the people show up, he doesn't have to show up. Okay, but I still think that we have a funding party that's willing to be a funding party, and until such time as something happens, cause them not to be a funding partner, we can't just agree to take money off the table, money that we really don't have to pay. Last 2 points.
So what you're saying is you're willing for us, our citizens, to continue paying for your students through the city of Rocky Mountain indefinitely? That's the whole problem.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what you just said.
Well, that's what you just said.
No, I didn't say that. No, I said meet with Rocky Mountain. No, that's what, we're not gonna put words in each other's mouth. Okay. Reverend Hines, then Mr. Boswell, and that's the last two.
I'm just trying to find out when the two boards gonna have an opportunity to meet and discuss what we discussed today among ourselves, and then come back for a joint meeting.
Well, let me ask is there a willingness to have another meeting?
Certainly.
April 5th.
Okay, what we'll do, after they have their meeting and we have our meeting, we will schedule through the managers another meeting. Of course, we probably can't set that day here.
that meeting needs to be
Real quick.
Tuesday after your commission.
If we're both meeting on April 4th, then we can schedule right now a meeting on the 5th, 6th, or 7th.
What are the days We can go ahead and schedule those meetings while we're here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
make a motion if we meet with the Nash County Commissioners on Tuesday, what is it, the 5th? Is that the day after the budget?
During the day.
Mr. Chairman, I want to say the last word.
I second the
Give me-
motion.
I think that.
Hold on,
although-
let's finish with this and we'll give you that. Go ahead, finish.
I got a motion on the floor if we meet on Tuesday, May the 5th, April the 5th. What time to be determined, whatever's best for
Well,
everybody.
let's set it here so that we won't have to, let's put a time to it so that we won't, then it's already out there. We won't have to.
10 a.m. Tuesday, May the 5th.
The second to that?
Second. Second.
And Mr. Boswell, that is a meeting of our two boards as we have had today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Question? All in favor, let it be known by voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none, that meeting is set. Mr. Chairman, do you want to go ahead and set that meeting
At the same
for the same time?
Yeah, 10 o'clock.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that our board, Nash County Board, also meet with the Edgecombe County Board Tuesday the 5th at 10 o'clock at the Gateway Partnership Building.
Now, there's a second to that motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. You've heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed at the same time? As unanimous, so we'll meet on the 5th.
is there any other business, Mr. Felton?
Yeah,
Comment.
last comment is, even though our comments at times have appeared to be acrimonious and non-friendly and that sort of thing, I think that we need to convey to the public that we have good intentions and we have friendly relationships. We don't intend to belittle anybody or hurt anybody's feelings. It's the ultimate thing that we need all to think about is the taxpayers and citizens of Nash and Edgecombe County and the children in Nash and Edgecombe County, and try to do what's right for everybody. And as Vice Chairman of Edgecombe, I appreciate y'all being here and appreciate the opportunity to meet with you.
Mr. Evans, we got lunch.
Yes, sir.
For the both boards. Just announce it before we adjourn.
Yes, sir. We did provide lunch for both boards, whoever would like to stay, and give everybody a chance to take a break in a minute, and lunch is already set up and prepared.
Oh, safe to eat it,
You didn't hear?
I'll eat first if you like.
I
don't mind.
It came from Charles. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor, let me know by voting sign aye. All opposed, you know.
All right, Nash County, motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Barnes, second by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor of it, let it be known by saying aye. And opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it, unanimous. Meeting adjourned.